How's it going, YouTube? Come on today with another video, and today, guys, the video is going to be how to beat the format. So today is going to be a little different than what we're used to. I'm going to be going through every individual matchup that I think that is going to be extremely relevant for you, and we're going to be talking about the ins and outs about how to really play against the deck and things that you really want to keep in mind whenever you're playing against it, because of the fact that there's going to be a lot of nuances that you really got to keep track of. If you haven't checked out my sponsors over on GemCloud, Arla, Imperium, Dragonshield, RW, MainPhaze, and Grimoire, definitely go ahead and do so. And then also check out my METAFY for one-on-one coaching. If you want to test for YCS Columbus coming up, I'm hosting a tourney. I only need a couple more people. First place gets VSK9, second place gets Malice, third place gets a Starlight Chant. This is going to be in my Discord down below in the description. Check the announcements tabs for information, and then go ahead and DM me if you're interested in joining. The last thing here is going to be definitely subscribe if you're enjoying the content. We are on our way to 30,000. We're like 14 away right now from 26K. Thank you so much. The channel's been booming. We're just about at 200,000 views in the last 28 days, guys. We are doing it. And, you know, I really do hope that you enjoy the content lately. Really just been ramping up production and really trying to show you guys the amount of information that you may be missing out on and being able to help you as much as I can in your gameplay. But without further ado, let's hop right on into our first topic. The first deck that I have for you today is going to be Sky Striker. Now, this deck is really good in the format, and there are so many breakers that the deck can play. I mid deck Fuala, so I know a lot of people have question marks when I say that, but like at the same point in time, this card mirrors Maxi, and when you resolve it and draw even 2 cards, and a deck like this, you can tear through almost any board in front of you because you're going into that turn with like 7 or 8 cards in your hand. Kind of wild, right? The other thing too is if you wanted to just hit engage with accusation, that it's probably perfectly fine. This is going to be a really crazy way to make sure that your opponent can't plus 1,000, right? The other thing though that is going to be the 2 most important hits in the deck. One is Retaliating Sea on linkage. This is crazy because linkage can't resolve. If you chain Ret Sea, you can't send anything to grave, so linkage resolves without effect. And that is so very brutal because not only are you losing a spell in your grave to be banished, you're also like not getting your monster to be summoned. You're not dodging something like a hot red-esque effect like Rhapsody on a card that you control because you just got Ret Seed, right? Like there's so many issues with getting Ret Seed on linkage. The other thing that is absolutely just like almost game ending sometimes is your opponent uses 0 because they want to get the Ray and the Rose out and the non-targeting destruction, which also means they can go like Ray into Kagari and then be able to add back and engage and then use the Rose as like an extra thing for droplet, right? Like it's very beneficial for this to resolve. And if it doesn't, your opponent is just like out of a monster on board. And this is a horrific situation to happen during a duel. So if you have Ashe or Bell, saving it for that second effective 0 is so very good. The other thing though is that there's always nuance. If you're in a point in the game where you know they have the Lemnis Gate, you have to determine if you'd rather Bell the Lemnis Gate or Bell the 0 pop, right? Because the Lemnis Gate can be very brutal as well, and it can return anything, it doesn't matter. So would you rather deal with 1 pop or mass return, right? So definitely keep that in mind as well. Then you have Lightning Storm and Feather Duster. These are going to be very fantastic as well. These are going to basically just check for accusation or judgment, right? Or in my case, I play things like Flame. They just kind of check for that. But you also have to have the answer for these, right? So if you're under Droll as well, and then you have to like force set a couple cards, I hope you hard open the out for the Lightning Storm or the Duster, right? That's always been Striker's like #1 problem. Unless they have like a D ground that they can just like chain and then it doesn't matter too much. But it also depends on the matchup. The next one here is going to be Branded. A lot of the decks on here you'll see that really get hurt by things like Di-Fi and D-Ground because these cards are broken and very much so in the format. Super Poly is fantastic into this matchup. You can Theseus in some points because there's a lot of tuners in this deck and it's a very good opportunity to just go ahead and clear bodies. You could hypothetically Super Poly into Dogma. We see this a lot in the mirror matches as well. This is a absolutely crazy Super Poly target. The next one is going to be Garura, of course. We see this a lot. And then Secretarian. If you catch your opponent lacking and there's a Spellcaster and a Dragon on board, this can make things fairly awkward if your opponent doesn't have Fallen and Virtuous. The next one here is going to be Ogre onto the Dark Dragon. This is still my all-time favorite hand trap hit this format. this is just such a brutal hit, and then your opponent has to like recycle the Dark Dragon, try to summon another one, right? So definitely not the best option for your opponent to be stuck with. The other thing here is going to be Bell on Knight of your Servant. Such a fantastic starter for your opponent. They're going to end on a lot of bodies. They're not going to end on like extra deck bodies, but they're going to be something on your turn, trust me. There's going to be a lot of fusions happening. The other thing here is going to be Ash on the Fallen and White Dragon. I know a lot of people are like, well, if you see Branded Fusion, you shouldn't Ash that, but like, listen, if my opponent leads Branded Fusion, I'm probably still hitting it, because a lot of times if they're leading Branded Fusion, it's their worst starter. But hitting the Fallen and White Dragon, if that's like the first thing they summon, they go effect and you Ash it, this is also going to be a really effective way to shut this deck down. And then Illusion Gate, Regeki, cards that can just mass clear, because there's going to be a lot of bodies. Just make sure that they don't have opening engrave if they have a lot of fusions, because of the fact that they can just be protected, right? But at the end of the day, if they just end on a lot of bodies from like Knight of your Servant, they better be able to like chain into a fusion and then still have opening in the grave, right? So definitely going to be something you want to look out for. Kewl Tune. So Super Poly Nethesius, this is going to be your absolute favorite thing to do. But here's the funny part, is that your opponent can see the Super Poly, but there's not really anything they can do about it, right? Like, they're not just going to pass on Remix and be like, all right, here you go, right? Because one Bell, one Call by, one just anything, if they have a set card, you like impulse it, right? There's so many things that could go wrong with just like a Remix pass. So they're always going to want to put up a board, and having Super Poly for the Theseus is going to be really impactful. Fua and Perulia, this one is going to be really solid. There's a lot of normal summons that happen, especially if you have other hand traps like Veilers or Imperms, and your opponent is forced to like go ahead and keep extending and normal summoning. That's going to be really important. You still have Retsi for Synchro Overtake or KTS. Overtake is at 1, but people are bumping Duelist Genesis up to 2 to search this. So you're still going to be able to see it, and it's still going to be worthwhile to have the Retsi. You can Bell the Remix, and then you can Droplet the RS, or you can use the Droplet in a way where they use RS to negate like a spell or trap that you have. And then when you activate it, they chain RS, you chain Droplet to send the card and negate something else. Because the RS is a hot red, and the card has to remain on the field for it to be fully negated. So if you get rid of the card, your opponent can no longer have that card being negated. So that's pretty fire, and a really good way to use your breakers into a deck like this. If you expect the RS to negate, you chain Droplet, get rid of the card they're negating, negate something else, and then keep going about your day, right? Especially if it's like a monster, and then you can send the monster and negate like the Zaylin. That's going to be really impactful. And then Di-Fi D-Ground, because floodgates are crazy. Now, as for the Power Patron FTK, this is very, very fragile, and it's not necessarily very good. Like, it's something that you can do, and it's protected through many hand traps, so you're probably going to need 2 hand traps, or if you're just like charming your opponent, right, this is going to be something that you also have the option to do and be successful with, whereas your opponent is going to summon Shade from hand and Medius from hand. So hypothetically, you could have Perulia with this as well, because you need to be able to see 2 hand traps to beat this because of the trap. But there are multiple choke points in this that you need to be aware of. So the first one is going to be Ogre on the field spell, because you don't get the additional 10. The other thing is going to be Imperm or Veiler, which these are going to be 2 of your most important hits here, onto Beyond or Shade. If you cut off either of these, they're in a really rough spot, because they really need all the bodies that they can get for this combo. The other thing that, if you want to just like absolutely snip this off right at the end, you can Bell the Charmer's Quartet. You can DD Crow the targets of the Charmer Quartet, because they're going to be Nervetto and Ginaldo. They need to be able to rank these up into their extra deck forms, so they can overlay into Gustav Max for the last time. If you just DD Crow one of these, they are not going to be able to make the last Gustav. I always recommend stopping this earlier, but if you get to this point and this is the hand trap that you draw, this is going to be the optimal spot. DoomZ is a deck that you can just like raw Nibiru most times, but sometimes you will need the Veiler, or you just want to wait. You can just like wait until they summon the Regulus and then start continuing a little further. And then when you want to, you can just activate Veiler first and then Nib, right? So this is going to be really effective, because Nibiru into this matchup is kind of cracked. I really don't like keeping Call by the Grave in going second, but it's really good into this matchup because it's something that can answer the Regulus. The other thing is that if your opponent summons Alara, usually your opponent's going to go change, pop a Amalth, summon the Alara effect to set the Adrastea. If you just crown the Alara, they're going to be in a very awkward spot because this effect is really important for them to resolve. The other one too is when you're breaking through the board, just know that you'll have to deal with like the Regulus and the Drastrius and usually a Verudgerus. But if you really want to make sure that you can deal with the Drastrius, you're going to need a Droplet because it's usually untargetable because of the attached spell material. It's Doomderg, and that card is a little obnoxious. So make sure that you have a Droplet to be able to answer this card. Now against Elfnote, I always really like shutting down the Medius because summoning out the level 1 to be able to go into things like Librarian and draw 1,000 or just like be able to combo really heavy. This is a card that you want to make sure you don't let resolve. Die-Fi, D-Ground, again, very crazy cards here. You can Ogre the Dawn Dragster when you're trying to break through the board because it has to reduce level, and if it can't reduce level, then it can't negate. So if they activate Dawn and you chain Ogre, it's like when your opponent used to use Appaloosa and you chain Ogre and then nothing would happen with the Appaloosa because it like couldn't lose the attack. It's the same thing with Dawn Dragster. It needs to be able to lose the level. Now with Welcome Home or Rhapsodia, again, Ogre is fantastic. Whichever one they lead with, if they're trying to like play into you or they're trying to like start their turn, it's usually gonna be Welcome Home. You can just go ahead and Ogre that when they pay cost, which is really good. Or if they like flip Rhapsodia, activate Rhapsodia on activation, you can bell it and get rid of the whole card. If your opponent's using Welcome Home, you can go ahead and just ash that as well. Many hand traps work into this matchup, and this is definitely a deck that you want to hand trap. But Ogre is going to be like the be-all, end-all into this matchup. Now the last one here got a little cut off, but Dawn Dragster and Crystal Wing will be on the end board. Droplet is going to be the main way that I really like to deal with these. I don't like Dark Ruler as a card. I would not play that this format. I'm not a big fan. It is something that a lot of people are trying out and a lot of people are using, but I feel like it's going to be like most times where a Droplet is just like the superior card and then Dark Ruler just falls off. But it is something that I will acknowledge is in the format, but it's just a major issue when things like Rhapsodia are in the game, right? Because this will attempt to negate something on the board like a hot red like RS would. And Droplet is even crazier for that, because if you activate something and they Rhapsodia it, you can just like Droplet, send the card they try to negate, and then negate like a Dawn Dragster or a Crystal Wing, right? It depends on how many you send, but this is how you get maximum value out of your cards. Because like, you can drain everything realistically with an activation, a Droplet, and like an Ogre. Because effectively what you can do is activate a spell that is going to be enticing to negate. Your opponent is probably going to try to like Rhapsodia it, right? So you can chain Droplet and you can send the spell. Then you don't have to make a declaration yet, right? And then your opponent is going to Dawn Dragster. And therefore, you can go ahead and Ogre the Dawn Dragster. Well, your opponent is probably going to Crystal Wing the Ogre. So now you look at where we're at, right? You just drained everything all at once, and you still have another 3 cards in hand, and you're in a very good position. And also, the Droplet is going to already have sent the spell that you activated first, so the Rhapsodia can't negate the first spell that you activated. So that is how you can get maximum value out of your cards and really be able to just like break through boards. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, definitely go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Check out my Twitter, Twitch, Discord, and Instagram. I appreciate you all, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Thank you.